Welcome, our dear viewers and listeners, to Scala News. In this encounter of dialogue organized under the supervision of the General Secretariat for Evangelization, I welcome you to this program in which we will discuss evangelization in a very special context and specialty of our confrere with us here. Today we have with us Father Seamus Enright, an Irish Redemptorist missionary. For 21 solid years, he worked in our community of Mount St. Alphonsus. Of these years, 14 years he worked as the rector and animator of this community. He was dedicated to the people, loved being with them, serving them with passion, and we can say he is the people's person. Father Seamus Enright, you are welcome to this encounter.
Father Christian, thank you very much.
How are you today?
I'm well, thank you, and thank you for inviting me to.
We are very happy to have you and excited about this encounter.
Thank you.
My dear listeners and viewers, this series of dialogue will focus on the theme of evangelization in the context of liminality and secularization. We will focus on this note in the special field of Father. He is a man of immense missionary experience and pastoral experiences as well. Father, will you start by recounting to us your vocational and pastoral experience in the congregation?
My vocational experience, I met the Redemptorists for the first time when I was a student in the university.
Yeah.
There were two Redemptorists in my class, Father Brendan O'Rourke, who's now the provincial of the Irish province of the Redemptorists, and Father Leonard Martin, who worked in Brazil and died at a young age. So I became friendly with those, and I began to visit the community. And I don't recall quite when I made a decision to join, but someplace along the way, I was quite attracted by the community life of the Redemptorist students at the time. And I also liked the idea of celebrating parish missions.
Oh, great.
I'd hoped I would spend most of my life as a Redemptorist preaching on parish missions. Unfortunately, it took a different direction at times, but that was the beginning.
So, what can you say is a specific impact of the Redemptorist charism on your life?
The impact of the Redemptorist charism on my life? I think one of the things about the Redemptorist story, about the Redemptorist tradition that impresses me the most, going back, say, to St. Alphonsus and the beginnings of the congregation, is to be inserted into the world of the people, especially to be inserted into the world of the poor, to look at life from the side of the people, and especially to look at life from the side of people who are abandoned.
Great.
I mean, we had a recent experience of that in Limerick when the war began in Ukraine.
Yes.
And when Ukrainian people began arriving in Ireland as refugees. I mean, first of all, the war started and we felt we should do something to help the Redemptorists in Ukraine, so we did some fundraising for them. Now, we thought that's what we would be doing. We didn't expect Ukrainian displaced people to arrive in Limerick, but they did. And we felt that we should really respond somehow to their needs. It was difficult because we didn't have the language, but then two Ukrainian Redemptorist missionary sisters came to help us.
Oh, right.
And that really was for us a very worthwhile Redemptorist experience, that these were the most abandoned people, and we were able to respond to their needs. And that continues now. Of course, we've had Ukrainian Redemptorist priests come to Limerick as well, and now there's one there permanently, Father Roman. And this weekend, one of the sisters will join him again, Sister Natalia, so that they can celebrate Christmas with Ukrainian people in Limerick.
Great.
So I think that was a reaching out by our community to the most abandoned people in Limerick at the time. We also, of course, in our church in Limerick have Mass every month for the Brazilian community and Mass every month for the Filipino community, because we're blessed in the community that we have Redemptorists who worked in Brazil and who worked in the Philippines.
Yes, for 21 years you've been in this community. We'll have a lot to talk about it.
Yeah.
Right now, I will ask this, I would like you to tell us how incarnated is this charism in the unit, the Dublin province of the Redemptorist charism?
The Limerick community.
Not only the Limerick, but the whole unit of your province.
Oh, I think our province is going through a difficult time because we're declining and we're dying. And yet I think we continue for an aging, declining group to have a lot of energy for mission and for ministry.
Yes.
I think in Belfast, if I was to take Belfast as an example, and we're now celebrating the 10th anniversary of the death of Father Alec Reid.
Oh.
The community in Belfast is very inserted in the life of West Belfast, but also has a very strong ecumenical ministry. And Father Alec, of course, worked to help bring about the peace process, and Father Jerry Reynolds and the community there was very committed to the work of ecumenism. So the Clonard community has a special focus on peace building, on reconciliation, on ecumenical relationship between the churches. In Limerick, of course, the church again is it's a very popular church in the city. We have a secondary school, a high school for boys.
Yes.
Where we attempt to live out the Redemptorist charism of being on the side of the marginal and the excluded. We continue celebrating parish missions, of course. Now, that's becoming more difficult for us because we just don't have the numbers of people to do it anymore. But
yes.
The work I've always liked doing most as a Redemptorist myself has been celebrating parish missions, and I still do it occasionally. And then, of course, in Limerick, we have a particular engagement with groups in the city who work with the poor.
Yes.
Especially around food poverty.
Yes.
50 years ago, Father Vincent Kavanagh began what was called at the time the Redemptorist Poor Campaign. It's now called the Redemptorist Perpetual Help Fund. And it mostly operates around Christmas. The aim was always a very simple one, to make sure that there was food on every table in Limerick at Christmas. And that continues to be our aim. And I was talking to Father Brian and Eileen Hoffler, who are running it the other day. And this year, between 6,000 and 7,000 families will be helped over the Christmas season. And that evolved because we collect money at Christmas and there's always some money left over. So we then use that money to support other groups in the city that are working, especially in the area of food poverty, but who are trying to create a more just and a more inclusive society.
Yes.
And we were among the founders of what's called the Limerick Food Partnership, which groups a whole lot of state and voluntary and community groups who all work together to try to eliminate food poverty in Limerick. It's really a scandal. Ireland's quite a wealthy country and Limerick is quite a wealthy city.
Yes.
But people go to bed hungry in Limerick at night. Children go to school hungry in the morning. It's estimated that about 8% of the population experience food poverty of some sort. So we've had a big commitment to try to help eradicate that.
Thank you very much. So even with numbers being less, with their physical health being a challenge, and even the age, we are still true to the evangelization and the charism of the Redemptorists. Thank you so much for your service, Father. We are very happy. I will now go back to specifically the question of displaced people.
Mm-hmm.
Apart from feeding and maybe clothing or housing, do we have insertion? Do we bring them to the community, and do we have any pastoral work like evangelization?
Yeah, we're very blessed in Limerick at present, of course, that we have a Ukrainian Redemptorist in the community,
Okay.
Father Roman Lahish,
Okay.
and the Ukrainian Redemptorist missionary sisters come occasionally. So as well as accompanying the people, and it's mostly a mission of accompaniment, we do celebrate Ukrainian Greek Catholic liturgy in the church on Sundays.
Great.
And so there is that pastoral accompaniment as well as a social accompaniment. We also, of course, in our province, we've had a long missionary tradition. So many of us have worked abroad in India, in the Philippines, and in Brazil.
Yes.
So we were approached some years ago by a group of young Brazilians in Limerick to know, could we celebrate liturgy for them in Portuguese? So we do that every month. And because two of the community, Father Lawrence and Father Cornelius, both worked in Brazil.
Yeah.
And then Father Ed McMahon, who worked in the Philippines for 40 years plus, he celebrates a liturgy every month with the Filipino community.
Oh, great.
So there is the accompaniment of displaced people. But there's also an organisation in Limerick called Doris. Doris is the Irish word for door.
Okay.
And it's an organisation that's at the service of migrants, and it's about welcoming migrants to Limerick. So we were one of the founders of Doris when it began. It began life in our monastery, but it has moved since into other premises, and we continued to be involved with those. I was a member of the board for many years, and before me, other Redemptorists served on the board as well.
Great.
And I noticed on Facebook the other day that Doris and the Redemptorists in Limerick are combining to celebrate the feast of St. Nicholas with Ukrainian children.
Oh, great.
Because St. Nicholas's Day is a very important day for the Ukrainian Greek Catholic community. So one of the things I think that we're always trying to do in Limerick is establish networks and partnerships and work with other groups. We have a voice and we can use our voice. We have a good voice in the city and we carry weight.
Great.
So we can use our voice. And you did mention that as we're getting older and fewer, but I think the intensity of our ministry continues.
Great.
But for how long it can continue, of course, is the question.
We hope it will.
Not in its present shape, I think, unless there's fairly radical Redemptorist change, I think.
When you say voice, it means advocacy.
Advocacy, yeah.
Great. Thank you. At the peak of the ravages of COVID, you were on air calling for new ways of relation.
Yeah, we were very fortunate, of course, that we were already streaming our liturgies. And Father Adrian Egan, when he was rector, did very good work getting us online. And we were streaming and building up a following. But during COVID, it really exploded. And even though the church was closed, because all the churches in Ireland were closed for a particular length of time, we continued celebrating liturgy every day.
Yes.
People all over the world, we began to realise that we had a following all over the world. And then we began to do extra services.
Yes.
People were very isolated and people were very lonely. And so we prayed the rosary, we celebrated the Stations of the Cross, we had special prayer services at different times of the day and at different times of the week. So it was, even though we were in lockdown and we were in many ways cut off from the outside world, we did build up this big following, this big online following. And then that led to a lot of correspondence with people. We had telephone ministry, people emailed us, we emailed them back. So even though we were isolated, we were very engaged.
Great.
Probably more engaged at one level than we ever were.
Really?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that experience. I think being there for the people has always been your passion.
Well, being there for the people is what Redemptorists are about, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. What is it like to be a pastor during those dark days of the COVID?
Oh, I did an interview with one of the local papers about what it was like living through COVID.
Yes.
And one of the things I remember saying to them was, one part of it was actually quite pleasant, because we were in the monastery. You weren't going out all that much.
Yes.
There wasn't as many meetings to attend. There was a little bit more time to rest and a little bit more time to read. So the lazy side of me began to enjoy the isolation. But then we had all this contact with people, of course.
Yes.
But it was for us a very difficult time as a community, because 6 members of our community died during the time.
Oh.
Now, none of them died from COVID,
Okay.
but there were restrictions on visiting people in hospital. There were
Yes.
restrictions on visiting people
Yes.
in the nursing home. Father Eamon, president from our community, was in a nursing home for the elderly, and Eamon's mind was gone. So Father Raphael Gallagher used to visit him every couple of times every week, but he could only stand outside the window,
Okay.
looking in at him. So how that was, Raphael was so faithful to that. So it was a difficult time for us as a
Yes.
community, because of trying to visit sick confreres in restricted circumstances, and then celebrating funerals
Yes.
in restricted circumstances, because only 10 people were allowed
To
attend a funeral at the time.
Yes.
So we had the funerals of confreres. Normally, lots of family would come. Normally, people would join us for lunch afterwards.
Yeah.
There would be a social side. Funerals in Ireland have a very important social side.
Yes.
People gather, people talk, people cry, people laugh, people tell stories, and most of that
Mourn
didn't-
together as a big family.
Yeah, most of that didn't happen. Now, for us, it was difficult, but it was very difficult for people.
Yes.
And we had a lot of contact with people on the phone. People couldn't grieve properly. People felt they couldn't go to funerals. There were tensions in families as to who could go,
Yes.
because not everybody could go.
Yeah.
So it was a very difficult time for people, and I think the trauma is ongoing. One of the things we have in the monastery is we have a counselling service.
Yes.
We have 2 sisters who are professional counsellors who work in the monastery. One is a mercy sister and the other is a presentation sister. And after COVID, their workload increased considerably, because people were carrying burdens from
Yes.
COVID. People were traumatized. There was a lot of grief in people's lives. So it's wonderful that we do have this counselling service. It's really, in many ways, an extension of our confessional service.
Yes.
Traditionally, we had a big confessional ministry in Limerick, but of course that's almost dead now, because most people in Ireland don't go to confession anymore.
Yes.
And then we would have a priest on duty, and we still have that, but it's more limited than it was. So the sisters working as counsellors have picked up on some of that work. And again, it's a service that's available to people. Counselling can be very expensive,
Yes.
and not everybody can afford it. So this is a subsidised service.
Great.
We ask people to make a contribution, because I always think it's better that people contribute something. I don't think it's good for people to be getting things for nothing. It's important that people take some responsibility.
Yes, to
and
participate.
and to make a contribution. But it's subsidised by the Redemptorist Perpetual Help Fund.
Thank you very much for your great service in this work of evangelization. As you are aware, Father Seamus, the congregation has been projecting plans for shared mission.
Mm-hmm.
How will you evaluate the role of the laity, and especially women, in our work of evangelization?
Well, one example, of course, is the counselling service that I just mentioned, where we work with these 2 sisters to respond to the needs of the people. On our parish missions now, we have some lay people who work with us as parish missioners, and also in a mission now in a parish, you would spend a long time preparing for the mission. You would work with the pastoral council.
Yes.
You would train people to take on roles during the mission. So I think the whole idea of participation, of allowing people voice, of surrendering control, Like when I began giving missions first, the Redemptorists decided,
Yes.
you would go to a parish and you would say, this is what we will do.
Yes.
Now we will spend a long time with the parish preparing. In my most recent mission, we did a survey of the parishioners. What would they like to happen during the mission? What should we preach about? Then the parish established a mission planning group.
Okay.
And then we decided, we still have the pattern of missions, mass in the morning and a mission service in the evening. So we decided then on themes and topics for the different evenings. And then we put a team together
Yes.
to take responsibility for each evening.
Yes.
So you could have hundreds of people involved in celebrating the mission.
In a way, we can say this improves the sense of belonging and
it deepens
participation.
this sense of community,
Yes.
the sense of belonging, and it also gives people confidence and builds up skills in the local
really?
parish community.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would like to ask, do we still have youth ministry?
We have youth ministry, but not, in Limerick we have a school, of course,
Yes.
boys' school, and that's our kind of youth ministry focus in Limerick.
Okay.
But we have a dedicated youth ministry community in Scala in Cork, and we also have a youth ministry team in our community in Belfast, and we have a director of youth ministry
Yes.
working out of our provincial headquarters in Dundalk. So we are still involved in youth ministry.
Great. The general chapter identified some trends in the world, liminality and secularism, as a great challenge to the church and also to the congregation. In your experience, how would you suggest, or what will you suggest, that we live in these trends and projections?
Well, if things continue as they are, the Irish province will die. I mean, there's no doubt
Really?
about that. I mean, we are dying. There's no doubt but that we're dying. We have one person in formation who's in the novitiate in the Philippines at present. We're getting old. And if I think about Limerick, maybe there's 10 more years left unless something radical happens. And I often think our community in Limerick was founded by migrants. The early Redemptorists in Limerick, there was an Austrian and a Ukrainian convert, Father Petrin, from Russian Orthodoxy, and a Scottish man and Belgian. So we were really founded by foreigners, by outsiders who came to Limerick
Yes.
and who embedded the congregation in Limerick.
Yes.
Now, if I look at Limerick, I'm from Limerick myself.
Yes.
If I look at Limerick City, it has changed enormously in the past 20 years. It's now a very multi-ethnic, multicultural place. There's a big Polish community.
Yes.
There's now a big Ukrainian community because of the war. There's a big Filipino, Indian community. The people coming to our church represent all of those.
I think you
different-
still have Congolese also.
And we have Congolese, and there's a bit of a kind of a tragedy there, really. But so the people coming to our church at present are very varied. Lots of Indian people especially, and many of those belong to the Sarah Malabar Church. So I think if the Redemptorist community in Limerick is to reflect the city of Limerick and to reflect the people who come to our church, then it needs to become an international community.
An international community.
Yeah, so I think you need, we have Ukrainian already. I think you need a Brazilian. I think you need an Indian. I think you need a Filipino. If we're going to reflect the city, and if we're going to reflect the people who come to the church. And I think we missed an opportunity with French-speaking Africans, especially Congolese, when they came to Limerick first, maybe 25 years ago. They were interested in having a French liturgy, and at the time it was felt they would be better off to integrate.
Yes.
So they weren't encouraged to go down this route, and they weren't offered a French liturgy. And I think what's happened, I think the Polish, Indians, Filipinos, Brazilians are still fairly faithful to the Catholic tradition in the Catholic Church, but most of the Africans in Limerick, I think, have drifted.
Okay.
And because the Catholic Church wasn't responding well to their liturgical needs especially, they found our liturgies very boring. Many of them have drifted into these new small independent
Christian
African churches,
Yes.
African Christian churches. There's a big Congolese community in Limerick, but at one stage we would occasionally meet them in the church, or they might approach us if somebody died and they wanted a funeral, but that isn't happening anymore.
Yes.
So I think if 20 years ago we had had a French-speaking African Redemptorist, things might have gone in a different direction. So I think we need to learn from that experience, and I think we really need to internationalize the community. Like, I wouldn't advocate bringing overseas Redemptorists or overseas priests to Ireland to shore up the existing structure. I think that's what the bishops are doing. They're looking for priests to come and work in the parishes and just keep things going as they are.
Yes.
I think if we were to do something in Limerick, it would need to be like a refoundation of the community. It would want to be a new missionary initiative to try maybe to do what that first group of overseas Redemptorists who came to Limerick all those years ago did.
Yes.
Embed the Redemptorist charism in a city, allow it to take on an Irish shape. I think we need to do that now, and I think it means starting again and having a community. It would obviously have Irish people in it as well, but it would be international, as I say. It's either that or death.
Yes.
I think that the choice is very stark. We either internationalize or we die.
Yes. I think this is also the perspective of the general chapter and the general government. Internationality, multiculturalism, and other aspects that brings our diversity together. Do you think you can say a little to encourage confreres and our lay about this dimension spreading throughout the congregation, not only in Ireland?
Well, I think it needs to. I look at other groups in Ireland. I think the Salesians in Ireland and the Divine Word missionaries in Ireland have been to the forefront really in internationalizing their communities. I think one of the things maybe, and this of course is a bigger question, the Salesians are of the view, I think, that you should be formed in the country that you're going to work in. So they bring seminarians to Ireland.
Oh, okay.
And that they do some of their formation in Ireland because they say it's more difficult once you're ordained and you're kind of set in your ways a little bit and you're enculturated in your own culture. It's more difficult then to adjust to and change to a new culture. So it works better maybe if people are formed
trained
in the place where they're going to work. But that's not always possible, I think.
Okay, yes.
And I'm not sure it's possible for us. But I think some serious thought needs to be given. I don't think we can internationalize every community, but some serious thought needs to be given, I think, to maybe doing some pilots. And I'd like to think that Mount St. Alphonsus in Limerick might be one of those pilot schemes.
Areas.
I mean, I no longer live there now. I've moved to our community in Dundalk. But even though I physically moved, I think my heart hasn't moved yet.
Yes, I was going to ask that question.
Yes.
But before I ask that question, now, in few words, what does it mean to be a Redemptorist today?
What does it mean to be a Redemptorist today? If I knew that, I'd guarantee a future for the congregation all over the world. I think to be a Redemptorist today is the same as it always was, is to insert yourself into the world of the people, to be on the side of the people, especially to be on the side of the poor, to keep alive the tradition of St. Alphonsus. I think especially the confessional, insofar as people are going to confession, the confessional practice of St. Alphonsus. I had an experience during COVID, during lockdown. A man sent me an email that he needed badly to go to confession. So it took me a little while to reply to him. And then I replied to him and I gave him my telephone number and said, if you phone me, we can make an arrangement, even though we're not meeting people at present. If you badly need to see me, we can make an arrangement.
Great.
And then he got back to me to say, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't wait for your email because I went to another congregation in the city and they gave me a really rough time.
Oh my God.
And I don't think anybody should ever be given and this is one of the new congregations in the church,
okay,
who gave him a very difficult time. He said he was traumatized after going to confession there. So I would hope that that won't happen in our churches, though in the past, of course, we have had a bad experience in the Irish Redemptorist province as confessors.
Yes.
We weren't always as accepting or as gentle as we should have been, and we lost touch, I think, in so many ways with what St. Alphonsus was about, but we've regained it and we need to hold it now.
Great. Thank you very much, Father. I have two sets of questions, but relating to one thing, nostalgia.
Nostalgia is a sign of death, but anyway.
Nostalgia. Ireland is a very missionary country, was a very missionary country.
Yes.
The missionary enterprises in Africa,
Yes.
Asia, Latin America. Right now, you say you are dying.
Yes.
So the nostalgia comes in.
Oh, it does and it doesn't. We are dying, really. I had a little example of that this morning. I was telling you, I spent the morning with Father Richard, who's the Superior General
Yes.
of the Catechian missionaries, who are in a small Irish missionary society.
Yes.
But he's a Nigerian,
Yes.
and their headquarters now is in Nairobi.
Yes.
And all the people who are being ordained for the society are Africans.
Oh.
So they have old Irish men and young Africans.
Yes.
So I think that's what happens, really, isn't it? Life grows in one place and it takes roots someplace else,
Yes.
dies in one place and is born someplace else. I don't think there's much nostalgia in Ireland. I think one of the things in Ireland at present that's worrying, really, in the wider society is almost a collective loss of memory.
Yes.
People have very easily bought this new kind of secular kind of identity,
Yes.
and there isn't much memory of church. And now there are little pockets
Yes.
in it. So, but nostalgia is bad for us.
Okay. The last is your love for the community of Mount St. Alphonsus for 21 years. Now you are in the community of St. Joseph in Dundalk.
And I don't love them yet. But I will in time. I'm from Limerick myself, of course, as well, so it's my hometown.
Yes.
And as well as being there for 21 years now, I
Yes.
was there twice previously.
Yes.
So most of my Redemptorist life has been tied up with Limerick.
Yes.
You know, the time comes to move. It was time to move, and I moved. I was asked to move, and I moved. But I just moved to Dundalk, of course, and then I went on sabbatical. So I haven't really had any great opportunity to put down roots there yet. So, as I said earlier, I think my heart is still in Limerick, but gradually it'll move to Dundalk.
Gradually. We appreciate your presence here, Father, and your sharing with us. I am very sure that you will continue this work of evangelization and witnessing to our charism, the Redemptorist charism, wherever you are going to be. Thank you for your services, and we appreciate you. Our dear viewers and listeners, we are very grateful for your time shared with us. We thank you for your support, and we continue to pray together. May God bless you, and may all your going and coming be under His protection.
Amen.
Thank you.